Well, over my shoulder, my right shoulder, I've added something to the backdrop of this of my studio today. It happened just a little while ago as I was recording with Nok Young, and the reminder was that today, once again, after 18 years, IDF soldiers are in Gush Katif.
Mm.
In the Gaza Strip, yes, but in the place called Gush Katif. What was once a beautiful, thriving city is now in ruins and will need to be rebuilt. I was there in 2005, 3 weeks prior to the pullout. IDF soldiers, after I would leave, IDF soldiers would be ordered to go into Gaza, into Gush Katif, and take Israeli citizens, Jewish citizens, from their homes. Some of them 18 years later are still have not found a permanent residence because of political structures in Israel. They've lived pretty much as homeless through these years. 18 years go by, and the IDF is in Gush Katif, not to take Israelis out of their homes, but to protect Israelis in their homes. Barry, what happens when we negotiate with the enemy? What happens when we compromise? What happens when we lose our passion for the inheritance that the Almighty has given to us? Well, I can answer my question pretty easily. It's called the Gaza Strip today.
Mm-hmm. The world would stand up and beat their chests loudly and make their demands. I'm often amazed at the overuse of this demand. We demand, we demand. Who are any of us to demand anything? But to demand a ceasefire, a pause. The only effect of a ceasefire at this moment, Mike, is to give the adversaries in Gaza a chance to reload, rearm, and reposition. Because the war will not be over. They're not going to say thank you, whoever they call God, that they're not dying today. You cannot negotiate. You cannot compromise with someone who has a weapon in their hand, and the moment the paper is signed, they start pulling the trigger and throwing the blade. There is no ideology allowed in their mindset that says we can accept a compromise and a peace treaty. They're not interested in that. The only thing they want, and what the media and elsewhere would promote, is the idea of, well, if Israel would just give some land so that they could spread out a little bit. They're too crowded and too small a place. No wonder they're upset. If Israel would just land for peace, that's, Israel may be pushed in that direction, but that's not what the adversaries of Israel are wanting. They're wanting the absolute annihilation and complete genocide of the Jewish race of people. And once they would accomplish that in the land, they would be scurrying through their proxies the world over to make sure that Jews do not live anywhere else in the world. I've seen the pictures this morning of Stars of David being painted on homes and places in Europe to identify where the Jews live. Saw a sign that was posted in Turkey to a particular store that says no Jews allowed. What took place in the 1930s through the 1940s, no one in the world believed that could ever happen again. It was just, it was too unthinkable. It was, no one with any credibility would do that, even though even in the United States afterwards, ads for employment in the United States there would be captions at the bottom of a help wanted ad. Jews should not apply. So there was an anti-Semitism after World War II in the United States, and it has been pushed under the surface for the last decades. And now, of course, we're seeing it rise up. And I'm amazed that there are people that are carrying banners for Palestinians, as they're called, and waving their flag and so forth, that if they were in that area, they would be shot and killed and thrown off buildings, hung, because their variety of life would not be accepted. So this is not our intended subject for today.
That usually isn't.
But it does bring us into a place of Mike of all that is being broadcast. Who are y'all's people listening to? Those that are promoting those poor people, or those that are saying get them, or are they listening to someone else?
Well, and are they listening? There was an old song in the 70s, are they listening still? Perhaps they never will. It's interesting, Barry, to watch, what's going on and to follow the news. And of course, for me, having been in the land so many times, and when I hear a newscaster say something about Palestine, there is no such thing as Palestine. When I see a post from a mental midget on Facebook talking about, in the back of the Bible it says Palestine, so it should be. These are the things that caused the Holocaust. I've stood in Berlin many years ago. I stood in the building where they signed the final solution that all the Jews should die. I have stood on track 17 where many Jews were taken by boxcar to Dachau, to Auschwitz. I've stood in the auditorium, the Colosseum, where Hitler gave his infamous speech. I've laid in a bed in a house in Berlin and heard the siren. In the dead of night, hear the siren that has not changed, had not been changed for over 50 years. Attended a synagogue, the only one that was not damaged in any way during the time of Kristallnacht in Austria. I attended a Shabbat service there. Barry, I see the things that are happening around us today, and it is not so much the news and that which is happening in Columbia and Harvard and all of these indoctrination institutions that bothers me. What bothers me is the silence of teachers, Messianic, Hebrew roots teachers that are going about their typical service with no mention of Israel. A so-called teacher that I heard about just this morning that posted on Facebook, I guess, because I don't follow this person, nor will I. If I see them, I'll probably just go ahead and slap them. But this teacher, not a well-known person, posted on Facebook who is praying for the innocent Palestinians. Barry, there's no innocence in the West, in the area of Gaza. The only ones that are innocent there are those who are still under 10 years old, maybe. Because by the time they get to 10 years old, their innocence has been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
and they have been filled with hatred. It is the silent. Quickly, and I'll give it back to you. I was sitting in a house in Berlin. I'd been invited there as speaking for 2 or 3 days, and that night they served a dinner. They had numerous people coming that night to be there, and a lot of the conversation was in German. And go back to English, and most people at the table spoke English. And somewhere along the way, one of the people, and I did not really think about this when I went to Berlin, that I was staying in a house that was standing during the time of World War II. And I was staying with people that were alive during World War II. We sat there at that table, a beautiful meal, having a glass of German wine. And someone across the table said, "Well, we really didn't know what was happening around us." The person next to me said, "How long are you going to tell that lie? We all knew." People are silent today. Those are the ones that bothers me more than anything. Where are the teachers? Where are the messianic? You asked me a question yesterday. Does Israel? What's the donations that we're sending over there? It's not a drop in the bucket, Barry. We're not even making we're not making a ripple on the lake yet. That anyone in Israel, outside of just a very handful, should even know who we are. Sorry to go so long.
Perhaps in the back of any of mind is there will be a critical point of desperation where our brother Yehuda will open up the door and invite the house of Israel, Ephraim, come help us. We're in need, and we show up like the Calvary at the last minute. And we're going to come in and we're going to be appreciated and accepted and win a big victory with them and so on. The reality is, the question would probably be, where you guys been? Who are you and where have you been? So we go to Revive, we go to other conferences around the calendar. We can call the names of who we consider prominent and well-known people. And outside of this little bitty circle, not only does Yehuda know who we are, no one in this country knows who we are. You and I post multiple videos every week. I'm involved in at least 7 recordings a week. At least 7. And I appreciate everyone who watches. I thank you for your comments and sharing and so forth. But I'm not making if the radar screen would the line would go around and it wouldn't even be a blip. No one would know that it's there. We've laughed about, you can post a silly video with some animal trick or something other and you'll get millions of views. You post something other or trying to offer help and life and light and the word, and it's crickets. I'm not complaining. I'm thankful for everyone who watches. I'm thankful for the opportunity. I just know and understand, and I'm it keeps you humble. Son, you're not accomplishing anything yet. Not really. And the bigger, larger scope of things. So, Mike, when Yah spoke to me in 2014, here in this house, I was praying. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I was seated about where I'm at right now. When I heard him directly tell me, ask me for the corner harvest. His voice was the one I heard. I asked him for the corner harvest, not knowing what the corner harvest was. So once I asked, I knew that I had done what I had been asked to do. Then I set about asking him, who or what is the corner harvest and how do I reach that harvest? He was directing me to try to find a way to reach those standing in the corner, those disassociated, disenfranchised, disconnected from others, the standalones, the singles, the small groups. And that's been my effort. And I'm thinking, Father, you're asking me to reach a couple hundred people, maybe? Is that what you want me to do? I mean, if that's all that you want me to do, I will do it with all of my might. But I would have imagined that there were far more standing in the corner. But Mike, I heard his voice and I responded. When we talk about the silence that many are employing right now, whose voice are they hearing? Are they silent because they're intimidated by the overall message that is public, however it is presented, that this is somebody else's war and there are too many innocent lives that are being lost and we just need this thing to hurry up and be over? Or are we listening to the voices of intimidation that are marching and parading through the streets with Palestinian quote unquote flags and chants of praise to their false God? Are we afraid that someone will find out that we support Israel? Are we intimidated by those who say, well, we should just stay out of it? Are we afraid of what someone's going to say? Whose voice are we listening to?
Well, Barry, I think it comes down to this: that maybe it's people today get very the attention span of a goldfish is 8 seconds. The attention span of the average human today is, last I saw was, I believe, 3.1. So if you go to a fair and you're staring at a goldfish, it will probably stare longer than you will. We're almost a month into this war in Israel. There was you saw my post. Israel is not a fad to me. Support for Israel is not a fad. It's a conviction. It's a lifestyle. And however long this war goes on, I will still, God willing, be standing and will be a voice. Let me throw it out here like this. We talked about this briefly before we went on the air. On October 6th, prior to that, there had been stabbings. There had been shootings in Hawara. This is a community that you've driven through with me. Hawara is between the Tepuach Junction, outside of Ariel. And if people don't know where this is and you don't have an Israel map on your wall, I ask you why you have not gotten one yet. Yeah. Why? So if you're like, well, I don't know where that is, and you don't have a map on your wall of Israel today, while you're watching this, you should be ordering it online. Between Tepuach Junction and what is now Nablus, or we would refer to it as Shechem, the Mount of Blessing, is a town called Hawara. There has been many attacks go on there through the years. Friends of mine have been injured there. Their children have been injured in that town. There were all kinds of attacks that were going on there. But that's Judea, Samaria. That's the so-called West Bank, the derogatory term regarding that area.
Mm-hmm.
Those in Tel Aviv, they're concerned about the judicial reform. Those in Jerusalem, all over the country, the almost, as Hanok would say, we were almost in a civil war. But the news would come out of a car being shot at point blank. Well, that's in horror. I'm in Tel Aviv. That doesn't affect me. But now the rockets are coming into Tel Aviv. The rockets are coming into communities all over southern and now northern Israel. And all of a sudden, the rocket is aimed toward your house and you're in the battle. The problem is that people remain silent until the war comes to their door. The war is still in the Middle East right now. But if anyone doesn't believe that the war is coming to your own door, let me just say that I'll clean this one up as best I can and say you're very naive. What I'd like to say is a little stronger than that.
We've watched the news for years and seen reports of the homeless that had inundated the streets of some large prominent city, Seattle, San Francisco, LA, New York. And thought, well, that's the big cities, and that's just the way it is there. Now there are small towns and not as large, cities, and the homeless are camping out on those sidewalks. We saw the border towns in Texas being inundated with those illegally crossing. Well, that's in Texas. Now they're everywhere. And they're in just about any and all towns throughout the United States. And you just never know when you're shopping and you see obviously people that are uh, uh, how do I put this? That you guys are not from around here, are you? And they can't speak English, and they're trying to communicate with you in Spanish, or and you can't understand them, and you wonder, oh, how did y'all get here? It's not just in the big cities. The issues of street violence, of carjackings, of assaults, blind assaults, of gangland warfare. If you watch the news here that is local from just across the river from Gloucester down in the Newport News, Hampton, Portsmouth areas, almost every night the lead story is of some young individual out on the streets 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, shot and killed. Family are standing around with a candlelight vigil saying this gun violence has got to stop. But it doesn't stop. As long as there are young people out on the streets at that time with guns and gang mindsets, they're going to kill each other. And they do it all the time. Well, that's the big city. No, it's right here. If we think, as you're saying, that the anti-Semitic parades, diatribes, vehement speeches, attitudes in our school systems, it's only for the big cities. We are as blind and, as you say, naive and ignorant as we are on all those other subjects. Just like the homeless and the violent crimes and the gang warfare and so on have come to our small towns, this is coming as well. How would you feel if someone walked up while you went, shopping somewhere, and when you came home and there is a gold swastika or a gold Star of David painted on your front door? What if someone wrote all over your house, kill the Jews or Jew lover? would you be outraged? Does it take that much for someone to say this isn't right, and to actually have a sense of fear? So,
What can you do?
unless Yah wakes people up, I don't know that you and I banging on drums and yelling at the top of our voice is going to wake anyone up that's choosing to remain on the sidelines and saying nothing, doing nothing, and not indicating any preference whatsoever. When you say nothing, you're complicit.
But Barry, you can say things and do the wrong thing. Okay, let me go back and back up. I don't have an Israel flag on the rear window of my vehicle because I like my rear window. I'm not going to put a bumper sticker on my car because I'm not going to get into a gunfight in the parking lot and me be in jail. It's a day to be wise. We need to be very wise about what we do.
Yes, I understand that.
Silence is not just a verbal thing. It is a lifestyle. 100 years prior to this was 1843. Papa Timboom, the granddad, I believe it was, went to a very stirring service in Haarlem, Holland, at the Dutch Reformed Church there. He came back that night in 1843 and began a prayer meeting in his home to do two things. Number one, to teach the people that would come the scripture. Number two, to teach them to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and always stand with the Jewish people. 100 years later, it would be his family, Corey, Betsy, the rest of the family, that would be those who would now be famous for the hiding place. What can you do? In your own family, you can make Israel a priority. In your center of influence, you can make Israel a priority. When Corey's dad, when this began to break out in Europe, Corey's father would put a Star of David, would go stand in line, get a Star of David, and put it on his jacket. And Corey and Betsy said to him, "Papa, we can do more without making a public scene. We ask you to take that off of your jacket so that we can begin to do things behind the scenes." They would end up rescuing, I believe the number is 670 Jews. It's not always about putting the bumper sticker on. In fact, anybody can put a bumper sticker on their car. It's when you start to actually be involved that you can make a difference.
I think that's wise counsel. Not everyone who has as you say, a bumper sticker or flying the Israeli flag outside your home, etc., is. While I understand the sentiment, you're not really affecting anything. Not really.
No, because those who are supporting Israel are going to walk by and go, "Yay!" Those that are not are going to walk by and key your car. So, outward appearance of things is easy for somebody to wear a cross around their neck, Madonna. Britney Spears, whatever. It's easy to put a cross around your neck. That's meaningless to me. It's the things that you do when no one's looking. The things that you do that you're a part of. the people you're associating yourself with, so that you're informing yourself.
Okay.
But today, Barry, almost 1 month after the brutality of October 7th, people have gone back to the typical things that they've been. I mean, I look at Facebook. I don't care what you ate last night. I don't care. I don't care about your stupid cat trick. I really don't care what your dog dressed up for to go out and get candy in the neighborhood. I don't care. I think this is a season, and as Daniel reminded me of on Life on Purpose, and I don't normally give a commercial here, but if you haven't listened to it, just went up yesterday, Life on Purpose, the guys did an amazing job of speaking to this from a young adult standpoint. These are the one we need to make sure that this generation understands the battle, because let's face it, they're more equipped physically for the battle than most of. I'll just leave that there. We need to do what we can do, but when it only takes 3 weeks for people to go back to the stupidity that was their life 3 weeks ago, then what you've been doing for the last 3 weeks is not in your heart. It's not a part of you. It's just something you did because everybody else was doing it. Let me get off of that before I get in a lot more trouble.
A generation, or well, actually about 3, maybe even 4 generations ago, saw young men and some young women go to Europe and to Japan, the Asian Pacific, and give their lives to stop Japanese imperialism and Nazism, fascism, as it was rampant throughout Europe. Laura and I have been watching a series set in the World War II era, and it was powerfully depicting how swift and how fast the Nazi blitzkrieg took place, and how rapidly one nation after the other was falling, to where they marched into Paris unopposed, unthinkably. No one would have imagined that. And there sat England, trying to remain neutral as much as possible until the attack began on them. We forget that. And America was trying its best to stand on the sidelines and say, well, we will support you. We'll send you some arms. If that had continued, Europe would still be under the Nazi flag, if not much more of the earth. We failed to
we would all
remember.
know German.
Yeah. So we say, well, that can't happen. Get your head out of the sand. The attempt here is not to just conquer Israel and make them acquiesce and either die or leave. This is a religious war by a demonic entity, principality, that is seeking to establish a caliphate over the entire earth, every nation forced to succumb to the totalitarian rule of Islam. And you're not supposed to say, anything other than Islam is a religion of peace.
Yeah.
Not this kind of Islam. You may have a Muslim friend or coworker or neighbor that you think, they are very likable people. I have no issue with them. There is a variety of Islam that is anything but, and that it is this vehement, enraged, hate-filled religion that is seeking to demand that everyone in the earth, not just Jews, not just Ephraimites, but every individual on the earth succumb. And that's what they preach. The entire world will become as we are, or they will die. And if we think that this is anything other than that, well, this is just an Israeli problem. No. Whose voice are you listening to? Are you listening to the commentators, the prognosticators on the nightly news, or some social media pundit, some YouTube video? This is the reality. We're waiting around for the anti-Messiah to show up and have a new world order. What's the phrase that we used to use? Religion of humanism. It's very likely that this is the world religion. It very well could be that this is the world religion that will be forcing everyone to succumb to. Just a thought. So,
Yep.
the very least that anyone can do is to be powerfully engaged in prayer. And you better pray for your universities and your local colleges and these young folks that are being indoctrinated that, with a pro-Arab slant on this.
Well, I can't understand why anybody would send someone to a college like that anyway, but that's
But
just
they
my
do.
opinion.
They do, and they do by the millions.
I know. Well-meaning people send their children, and they lose their children there, but that's another subject for another day. Passion. This is a day to become passionate about things. And if passion makes you uncomfortable, you probably don't want to be around me too long, because I'm going to make you uncomfortable. As I've studied history through the years, Barry, I find the history records passionate people. There are very few compromising, lack of passion people that make the news in the long term. About the only two I can think of off the top of my head right now is Mr. Rogers and Barney. Which one do you want to be? What side of history do you want to be? The passionate? You want to be known as the person who was passionate for something, or someone that was more like a purple dinosaur? Just think about it. We can't all get along.
If this recording has made you a little bit uncomfortable, if you rolled your eyes, if you thought, I thought you guys would talk about something else,
tune in next week.
Yeah, maybe next week. This week, we're still in the thick of it. At the time of the recording, 12 Israeli soldiers have given their lives in the last 24 to 30 hours. And they are acknowledging we're going to lose more, but this must be done. It's time to pray. It's time to voice your support. It's time to send your support. It's time to say something.
Yep.
Walk wisely, but walk loudly.
If you attend a church, a Messianic congregation, and there's no voice for Israel today, there's no time of concerted prayer for Israel today, there's no appeal for giving to Israel today, my counsel to you is get up and walk out the door. You're part of the problem, not the solution.
Amen. Thank you, folks, for watching. If you're still here and you want to share this on your social media, thank you. And pray, and we'll see you again next week. So, shalom, Mike.
Take care, Barry.